Hello, I'm Rick Sheldhouse, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date references pretty quick, today is Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. On Saturday, September 15th, 2023, we visited the Utah State Railroad Museum in Ogden, Utah. And we probably spent 3.5 hours there. Really fun, a lot of different information presented, a lot of information presented with crossing the Salt Lake and how they did that, Promontory Summit where the Transcontinental Railroad met, and how the Central Pacific and Union Pacific met those challenges. And it was an absolutely fun time. In this building, there's actually several museums. The Cowboy Museum, which is okay. Then the John Browning Firearms Museum, which is upstairs, which is pretty good. Really nice, some great artistry work in those firearms. And then a antique car museum, don't remember the exact name, but it's on one of the other videos. And this is a enter once, pay one reasonable admission, and then tour all these museums for as long as you want. It was really an enjoyable time, and I love trains, so we had a lot of fun. So let's get on with the video. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. We're headed to the Utah State Railroad Museum in Ogden, Utah, and the very first picture here is the Union Station, Union Pacific Station in Salt Lake City itself. And then we move off to Ogden, Utah. And this is Union Station, Ogden, Utah. There are 2 or 3 major sections to this museum, and there's a complex of museums in here as well. The antique cars from the Browning collection, the Browning rifle and handgun collection upstairs, the Cowboy Museum, as well as the trains. The trains are outside under canopies. The trains are in the back tracks, not under canopies, but up by the boarding areas. And then inside, there's more stuff about the railroads. So it was a good-sized museum. Free parking in the business section, as I recall. I might be wrong, don't specifically remember, but don't remember being pushed. We walked up to the museum. I don't understand the purpose of the horse, but the Cowboy Museum is inside, so maybe it's associated with that. There was no signage associated with it. Walked into the building, and the very first thing that hit us was these murals in the ceilings by Edward Lanning, and they're absolutely beautiful. A classic railroad depot, and these are, I remember riding or transiting through these depots in Chicago as a kid, and the architecture of the building is absolutely beautiful. I don't remember what the admission fee is. I thought it was relatively inexpensive. There is a veterans and military discount, and I believe a senior discount as well. And it gets you into all of the museums. You get a wristband. We walked outside first, and I'd read articles on the super turbine locomotives. I've never seen one because there weren't that many, and they were normally in the western US, and this one's parked out there, and it's just an absolute positive monster. Walking around inside the museum is this display of how this thing is set up. The signage at the museum is pretty darn good. I can't say it's great. Some of it you'll see is weather worn. It's not always complete. And this particular locomotive, this SD45, it doesn't tell you. I don't think it tells you. But it is a EMD, so it was most likely made in LaGrange, Illinois, just west of Chicago. General Motors owns the electromotive division EMD, and SDs are one of their designations for their engines. So this Rio Grande 5371 is a EMD SD40T-2. I have to look some of these up. I don't know these by heart, believe me, so as I'm narrating this, I'm looking these up. This is another General Motors Electromotive Division engine, the DDA-40X, which was referred to as the Centennial Series. The Union Pacific 833, which affectionately I guess referred to as by elephant ears, is an American Locomotive Company engine, steam engine, and there were lots of pictures. Look at the carriages, the trucks underneath the tender of this. This locomotive carried a lot of water and oil. Because of the couplings and the hoses and the lines between the steam engine and the tender, they were normally linked for life with a drawbar, not a coupler. And in the yard is this boiler section from a oil burning steam engine. The firebox is that white chunk there on the bottom of the right side of this, and that the hot gases go through the center of this, come out the smoke box, which is that gray ashy area in the front. This is a boiler off of a steam engine. This American Locomotive Company engine, this 1216 44-ton switcher, it's also referred to as an ALCO, just an acronym for the manufacturer, was used at the Tooele Army Depot, and we visited the Tooele Railroad Museum. This U.S. Air Force locomotive, this 100-ton switcher 7277, is a General Electric engine, not General Motors, General Electric engine. I think it's seen better days. Now, no signs, because I have the internet. I can read the numbers on the station. This on the locomotives. This DLMX 324 is an ALCO RSD5, only because I looked it up. It was parked outside. I asked one of the people standing there, and this was an operational engine. I couldn't trace anything down on this Cargill grain hauling switcher, and it's possibly an EMD switcher, NW series, but I'm not sure. I'm only guessing. No signage at the museum. Southern Pacific 3769 appears to be an Electromotive GP9. Another switch engine out by the boarding area. No signage. I have no idea what it is. I couldn't find any references anywhere on it. And this rotary snowplow was sitting out there also with no signage, so I have no information on it, but it looks like it's diesel powered. Looks like it is self-motivating, so not like some of the others. And this other switcher sitting out here looks a little neglected. Joyce is standing next to what I believe is another Jeep 9 low nose, or a Jeep 20, GP Electromotive Jeep 20. Might be a Electromotive Jeep 20. I do know it's an EMD because the trucks on it say EMD. This is a rail post office, and if you read the sign, it's kind of interesting. Postal workers were required to carry pistols, handguns, and the thing that's on the side of the car was a pickup, and it's set up here. The station hangs their mailbag on this post. This arm comes out of the side of the car, grabs the mailbag, and then the postal workers can bring it in and sort it out. And the outgoing mail for that station, they just simply throw off the train. Yeah, that's what we want. There were several cabooses throughout the museum. Cabooses used to carry anybody who was associated with the train other than the engineer or the fireman who were in the locomotive. And cabooses have gone by the wayside in almost all cases. Now it's the rear end device, or the end of train device, whatever you want to call it, electronic gizmo that sits on the back. And that gizmo is also electronically linked to the locomotive, so if the train separates, the gizmo lets the engineer know that he's lost part of his train. In walking around the museum, and you're allowed to walk a lot of places, or it doesn't say you can't walk, and we did, but we also kind of exercise common sense. Here's a photo, and there was signage for this, but we didn't walk down to it. This is a 500,000 pound capable lifting derrick, primarily for train wrecks and things like that. When they were going to lift something up that was extremely heavy, what they tried to do is offload as much weight as possible. And then here's a U.S. Army work train. Joyce is standing by a caboose that didn't have any signage associated with it. A train that was set up for the parade during the Olympics that was hosted by Salt Lake City, which was kind of cool. And more train cars, tank cars, cabooses, box cars that were sitting around the area. This particular car comes out of probably the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, and it is a refrigerated car for Wilson Meatpacking. And the way they refrigerated them at the time was they opened up hatches on the top, they put ice in them, and they packed ice in the car as it was being loaded, and then along the way, if it needed more ice, they would open up the top, put more ice in it. Interesting. We moved inside, and these panels talk about the evolution of the Union Station in Ogden, Utah, and how they crossed the Salt Lake. And it was kind of cool and interesting. I tried to make them big enough so that you could read them. You can pause the video using YouTube to read them if you want. And the interesting thing was, in the middle of the lake, they had what appeared to be a crossing lane, and at one point they had a train misloaded. Instead of putting the explosives, the black powder, at the end of the train, they put it between the steam locomotive, and the kitchen car. And when the train had a minor accident, the kitchen car stove upset, got to the black powder, blew up the black powder, and killed a number of people and seriously injured a lot more people. This particular series of panels has to do with the Transcontinental Railroad, and it talks about, explains that the two railroads actually passed each other, wanting to get as much money as possible because they were being compensated by the mile of track laid. And if you go farther than you have to, you get more money, and they were making a profit. Another series of panels inside the building. We went up to Promontory Summit, where the Golden Spike, and it was actually Golden Spikes and Silver Spike, Nevada showed up with a silver one, were implanted in a special tie, and they were talking about it. And there's folklore and myth about where these spikes are now. This one's stating that there's one of them in the Stanford Museum, which is okay. So this was a safe that housed one of them. The one that's in it is a centennial commemorative spike. So it's not one of the original, and they weren't pure gold because gold is too soft. They were gold combination spikes, and the special tie was already prepared so that it wouldn't take a whole lot to get the spikes in. The museum was working at preserving history, and here's several different types of vehicles that were used around the railroad as it was growing up. If you're really interested in trains and railroads, this is a presentation of various types of rails, and I'm sorry I didn't print the poster that's on the right hand side of this image. It is tough to read because it's white print on gray and silver and white background, but this is evolution of rails, not particularly just the United States, over time. And the presentation, get tongue-tied, of railroad ties over time. And ties are critical. They have to endure a whole lot of abuse, not only from the weight being surged on and off of them, left and right. Animals get at them, which is one of the reasons why they're creosoted usually, to protect them, and the weather and fire and all sorts of things. At one time, and maybe still today, because of the way the aircraft have gone, the airlines have gone, riding on a train was riding in style, but you had, like airplanes, you had several classes. You could be in the elite class, or you could be in tourist or second or third rate, whatever you want to call it. And this is several panels talking about how that evolved. And the Pullman Car Company was on the south side of Chicago, and I've been in their buildings after they closed. As technology took over, the end of train device or the rear end device, whatever you want to call it, replaced the caboose in most cases. This particular set of panels, which was interesting, talks about life in the caboose, how the caboose came about, who gave it to it. Nobody knows where the name or the term caboose actually generated from. A fair amount of myth. Did it come from Dutch or German sailors? They don't think so. Did it come from whatever? And the panels tell you that the caboose is probably the item associated with the railroad that has been given more names than any other piece of equipment, because everybody wanted to call it whatever they wanted to call it. The railroads did and still carry a lot of freight, and when you're carrying freight, weight and volume is items you need to know. Here's a scale inside the freight house, and here's some panels regarding freight and freight houses. Well, many people consider the 24-hour clock 1322 type time presentation as military time. It actually is railroad time, and it is railroad time because you can save print by putting your hours across the top, and then in the columns putting the minutes, and so you don't have to put the hours and minutes. The other thing is it resolves AM. It takes AM and PM out, saving you further time and printing. And here's articles about time in relation to railroads. You have to operate on a schedule, otherwise you have issues like trains meeting at intersections. In building the Transcontinental Railroad, the Central Pacific building from the west coast headed east ran into a number of mountains and gorges that they either had to tunnel through, go over, or build bridges to cross. And here's some presentations of what they went through, and it's really cool.
Intro?
Yep.
I like how it's still very
The museum has a massive model railroad layout operating, and it exposes it. It shows a number of challenges that went into building the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific into Utah from east and west, and how to cross the Salt Lake to save time. And when you save time, you save money, whatever. And here's and I just get choked up because this was done so beautifully. Here's a whole bunch of pictures and some videos of this particular area, and if you pause it, you can read some of the history and the challenges they fought. doing this.
Hi, everyone.
There were several things around the museum focused on children or focused on just having fun. Out in one of the areas, which I assume at one time was probably a waiting area, were a couple of hand cars and speeders that you could climb in, get your picture taken. So I forced Joyce into it. She doesn't like doing that stuff. I do. And they had a few model railroad toy train type things for kids to play with, the wooden stuff. Nothing really big. This steam engine was outside. There was no markings on it. Looked like it had suffered the time of the pain of being out in the weather, and we just took some photos of it to document that. Now, there's no signage that we found for this particular car, and I searched it on the internet and found it. It's located in the information about them are located in multiple sources. I used Wikipedia, and this is actually one of 49 cars sent over in the late 1940s by France saying thank you very much. Now 49 cars, 48 states at the time, and the territory of Hawaii. Alaska was ignored for some reason. And there were cars saying thank you, and each one of the states got one. You can find it on the internet as to where each one of them are located, and except for the one for Alaska, because Alaska didn't get one. But it was interesting, and we have to tell the French people thanks for this. This is called an 8x40. It's 8 foot wide, 40 foot long, and it's one of the trains that was used in both one of the types of cars used in both World War I and World War II. A gift from France. As I said in the intro, we spent probably 3 hours there, give or take, maybe a little more, because there's 4 museums there, but the train museum absorbed most of our time. The admission fee is very reasonable. There is no snack bar, no food facility inside of it, so be prepared. But you can leave and come back as long as you keep your wristband on. We really enjoyed the 3 museums that we spent a fair amount of time in: the Railroad Museum, the Antique Car Museum, and the John Browning Firearm Museum. The Cowboy Museum was okay; it was interesting, but and a lot of really nice leather work in it, but the other things overrode our interest, and by the time we got to the Cowboy Museum, quite honestly, we were tired. This is a fun museum if you are a train lover, and in particular the Super Turbo, that Union Pacific X26. I'd read about them. I'd never seen one. Now I've seen one.